Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Just FYI, we are live on YouTube right now. So this is a public meeting. We are streaming, and we're also recording this to the cloud. So.
Hello, good evening.
Matthew, your antlers are stunning.
It's a light fixture, so.
No.
Really proud.
Halo, that's fine. Crown, yeah.
Like a crown, yeah.
Tiara.
Yeah.
Tiara. Good one.
Yeah. Don't easy there. Don't might go to my head. You know, if you start
It's
anointing
already
me
gone to your head.
royalty. Yeah.
I see you all are teasing Matthew. I teased him last week about his halo.
Charming.
I also, I permanently have an idea too, that light there. So it's, there's that one. So that's
Outrageous. Hey, counselor.
Yeah, I seem to be having some problems with this camera, so I'll just let you look at a picture while I view.
All right. So it looks like most everyone's here, I think, and we're already recording. So are we good to go, James? Do you think?
We have a quorum. We have a quorum. We have 4 people.
Yeah,
Voting. Yeah.
I think we're good on that.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right. I'm going to call to order the Enhancement Grant Program Committee, Metro Enhancement Grant Program Committee for a work session February 11th. And we did a declaration of a quorum, but we will go around and let's do a roll call really quick. Who's here? Rocky Smith?
Yeah, William Gifford.
Rachel Lyle Smith.
Christine Lewis.
Corey Ellis.
James Graham.
Frank O'Donnell.
I think Denise is muted.
yes.
That's Zook.
Denise, are you out there?
And Matthew Weintraub. I have asked her to unmute, but
Okay.
I believe we do have quorum if you want to continue or if you want to wait.
I think we're good. Do we have any public comments tonight before we get going? All right.
We have not received any.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to general business, and that is the Community Enhancement Grant Reform Package. James, are you going to start that off, and then Matt, or?
I'll start it off.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the committee. What we are here tonight to look at is a reform package that I'm putting forth for your consideration. Last year, it was my first community enhancement grant meeting, and I witnessed a 4-hour meeting. It was well done, but it was 4 hours. And we had a few surprises along the way, but nevertheless, we got through it. But it dawned on me after a review of the program that it did not have to be as complicated as I witnessed. And it could be, and certainly there's room for improvement in anything we do. So I'm submitting this reform package for your consideration. There are 3 elements, there are 3 issues that we're trying to address as a consequence of this reform package. As you all may know, the funding that we have available is virtually projected every year. And there are mitigating circumstances. Last year was a situation where we actually had to reduce the amount of money available because we were not certain as to how much money we would get from Metro due to the economy, and of course, caused by COVID-19. So we're looking at changing this from an accrual basis or projection type of methodology to cash. And this is also important because we do know that at some point Metro will be leaving Oregon City. And it's important that we are in a cash position so that when that does occur, we don't have a situation where we are projecting money or using money that we really don't have. So that's important to keep in mind. Also, the other reason for this package, the reform package, is that we also have extensions. We ran into the situation last year of extensions. And to my understanding, we had other extensions as well in previous years, but certainly not as many as we had last year. And that's, of course, probably because of COVID. But when you have extensions, it holds up the money from other programs and other entities that could use it. So that was important to work with people so we can mitigate extensions. And the third issue is the fact that COVID-19 has exposed some very important, important and very difficult situations in our community. As a matter of fact, in all of our communities. Child care is a big issue in Oregon City as well as in other parts of the country. And lots of people are suffering as a consequence of having to choose between taking care of their children or going to work. That's a terrible choice for anyone to make. And you shouldn't have to have that choice. And so childcare is a very important issue in our community and the lack thereof. The other issue that we're facing, Oregon City has a large number of young people between the ages of 18 and 35. And many of those individuals are working at low-wage jobs and are also, as a consequence of low-wage jobs, COVID has actually put a lot of them out of work because they're in industries that are based on tourism or face-to-face type of businesses. They need an opportunity to advance, and workforce development gives people an opportunity to gain a technical skill. Because as you know, prior to COVID, we had this issue also. Older individuals were leaving manufacturing and other technical based businesses, but they were not being replaced with young people because young people either didn't know those opportunities existed or had a skewed view of what opportunities looked like in those manufacturing or technical skilled jobs. So it's important that they also get involved in the economy and grow and have families and prosper. So these are the two issues that we have an opportunity to really impact. At this time, we don't have a lot of resources at this time to address these two major important issues in our community. And by utilizing this fund, it helps us with those issues, in addition to what the city of Oregon City will also do in connection with helping to alleviate the pressure and the issues relative to homelessness, relative to childcare and workforce development. So that's the reform package that I bring forth. One other thing I want to add before I stop talking is We want to also, the staff, this is also a staff-driven type of program. It's important that staff work with awardees on a quarterly basis to help to provide some assistance, some technical assistance, what have you, to help those projects move along and to help mitigate the need for extensions. So that's the reform package I put forth for your consideration. Thank you for listening.
All right. Comments, questions? All right.
I have a number of them.
Go for it, William.
All right, number one, and I appreciate the work that you put in on this reevaluation of the program, James, and I appreciate the fact that we had a private conversation regarding this as well. So let me bring up some of the issues that you and I discussed. Number one, and perhaps Councillor Lewis can help us on this, is that although we understand that there is planning being done regarding the transfer station, which will impact Oregon City's receipt of tipping fees, I was understood that it was also on the table that it was possible that not the entire transfer station would be moved out of the city, that it could be a portion of it, there could be an additional one. Am I correct in that assumption, Councillor?
So I'm on the committee and it's basically up in the air right now. We're still,
Okay.
I'm on the committee that's dealing with this.
Yes, I was asking the councillor from Metro's perspective first, and then I can get your perspective on that.
Yeah, we absolutely are exploring a new location, but the new location may be for only some of the services. Metro may not be moving everything.
All right, and Commissioner McGriff, did you need to add to that?
A committee meeting last night where we discussed potential criteria for evaluation, and that meeting will be continuing. So the assumption that this facility is leaving anytime soon is not correct.
All right, and I think that it's probably prudent for us to imagine worst case scenario and hope for the best. And I'm not sure whether it's a good or a bad issue regarding whether or not we want that transfer station to be gone and lose the revenue, or whether we can find a portion of it. But I'm just saying, if we plan for the scenario of reduced funds, I think that's economically prudent for us to at least imagine a reduction in tipping fees. So that's my first point, is that I don't think should be imagining that it's all going to be gone. And if it is, it won't all be gone immediately. So, however, that does feed into Mr. Graham's plan of sort of weaning us off of the projected income and work more towards a cash basis, which still makes sense to me. The second thing, and this is probably the most major thing, is that although I heartily agree with the concepts regarding childcare and workforce development, because those are two that I'm also a commissioner on the county's Economic Development Commission, and workforce and childcare have been two hot buttons that we have been looking at as well. I understand their importance, but in recent surveys done by Echo Northwest in the Tri-County region, in the greater Portland area, the two number one, hands down, issues to all participants are, number one, housing prices, which this program cannot address, I believe. But secondly is homelessness and the interrelationship between them. I would propose to this group that, in addition to Mr. Graham's suggestion of basing applications on the criteria of childcare and workforce development, that we add homelessness as an additional criteria. I think if we can find some ways of reducing that homelessness, the economic benefit to our community in so many ways will be greatly impacted. The other aspect of, and this just occurred to me now, is the idea of promoting workforce development is really only significant if there are jobs to be had. And unfortunately, with businesses failing and with less and less requirements for that, about the best hope that I would suggest to people trying to find a job is create one yourself, start your own business. But that's just my own bias. I do agree that workforce development will always be important. It's difficult for me to wrap my head around creating qualified employees when the jobs are not there. And yet again, like housing prices, I don't think that this program was ever introduced to be a job creating mechanism. My last comment was regarding the evaluation form, which we have not talked about yet, but I did notice on the last page that the last two questions were duplicated. I mean, word for word, two words were bolded, but the last two questions were duplicated. And I did mention to Mr. Graham the possibility that there may be a not applicable in those questions, but perhaps we can get into that more when we talk about the form itself. But for right now, I'll hold the rest of my comments. Thank you for the time.
All right, Christine.
Sure, thank you. I've got a couple of notes here, and I think it's good that we're talking about this program well ahead of having an evaluation in hand. We have an opportunity, I think, to make good impact on community, to really make sure that Oregon City is in the area of the transfer station still a wonderful place to visit for all the visitors who come to Metro South with their self-haul. And that's why I think that we have historically had the set of 10 criteria that you must meet at least one of. And I think that within those 10 criteria, you can definitely find your way to both economic development and childcare, and to Mr. Gifford's point, homelessness. I don't think I want to be at the point right now where I'm excluding good applications from community that meet those other criteria. And we can definitely have an in more intense recruitment of folks that meet these urgent needs. But I think there are programs we've funded in the past couple of years that meet some level of urgent need that don't fall into economic development childcare. So I don't want to close the door right now to the 10 criteria we've used since before I was here, and I think since the program was founded. I am supportive of moving to a cash basis. I do think that the amount projected, it feels right for year one, and we should probably pretty quickly move to the cash basis. And I'm curious about the amount of staff support that's in the proposal, $50,000 for the year. I'm wondering how that lines up to the staff support from the line items from year 1920 or 1819. So if staff could give us some context there. I think raising the cap of the maximum for the grants each to 60,000. If memory serves, that's nearly a doubling. I'm happy to raise the cap. I don't know if we need to raise it to double. And then I'm happy to have a score sheet. But again, I think that the scores are going to be, in my mind, against the 10 principles that we've always scored to. With a degree of urgency and capacity, those are other things that we definitely need to be putting into check. So I like having the framework of those questions. I'm sure we'll talk about more things, but I think you know where I'm coming from, and I've laid out one question about the staff support.
Did we want to address that question at this point? Because I had the same question.
Sure, I think that it's appropriate to do that so that we don't forget it. Matt Zook, who is our finance director, is here, and he can give you some insight as to the use of that money.
It's not the use, it is the comparison with the expenditures this year versus the history of this grant program.
Can we hold off on that until all the comments where we talk about finances altogether? I think it's a point that I will be making, but I think that it needs to be bundled with what the proposal is and talking about the cash accrual. So, Mr. Chairman, if you could do that, that would be great.
Anybody, does that matter to anyone? Is that fine with everyone? All right, let's hear from everyone, I guess, first, and we'll get to that, I guess. Christine, was that it, or did you have more comments, questions?
I'm happy with people weighing in. I'm sure I'll have more comments as more people speak.
Okay, Commissioner Lyle Smith.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Yeah, it seemed like everybody was addressing all things in this proposal all at one time. So I had some of the same questions as Councilor Lewis, particularly regarding the criteria. My understanding was this was a Metro program and that those criteria were kind of dictated as part of the program. And I feel like we've just decided to throw them out and come up with our own. And so I was just wondering if you could comment on, Councilor Lewis seems a little bit surprised by this. So I'm wondering what coordination happened with Metro, since I view this as a Metro program that we're participating in.
To answer the question, I talked with the Metro staff before even doing the staff report about this issue. It doesn't change just as long as we meet at least one of the goals that exist, we can do this. So we're not changing the goal. We're simply just focusing on more on the goals that the reform package calls for. And that's child care and more goals that are related to economic development for the community.
Okay, I guess it probably would have been helpful, and I guess I could go back and look, but it would have been helpful to see those 10 criteria from Metro that we're trying to, what we have traditionally scored projects on. But without that, I'm wondering what type of projects do you envision under the childcare checkbox? I can understand workforce training and development because we've had those types of proposals come before the enhancement grant before in the past. And so what types of projects do you think our community, what's an example of one that could come forward that would check the child care?
The child care. Oh, well, in terms of child care, I can envision organizations that have been out there working on this issue and coming forth and asking for money to help with that situation. Of course, it have to be nonprofit, but there are organizations I understand that are out there that could even partner with each other to provide the service of childcare. But we're encouraging not only partnership, but we're also encouraging people to step forward and help with this very important issue in the community. So I can see that happening.
Okay. I'm a little surprised by, I guess, what seems to be a real departure from what we've done in the past. And I do like William Gifford's idea of adding homelessness there, because I do think that is also a priority for our community. And there's a lot of service providers that would be interested probably in a grant program to help them provide services for the homeless. And I will say I do, of course, fiscally like the idea of moving to a cash basis. That just seems more fiscally responsible. So that one's an easy one for me to get to. And I'll stop with that and let others comment.
All right, Commissioner McGriff.
Well, first of all, I want to say that, let me just be frank. I don't like any of this, and I will explain to you why. Number one, this money that comes from Metro is the community's money. It is not the City of Oregon City's money. It is not the Economic Development Department's money. It is the community's money. And that's, I will repeat it again. This is the community's money to be used for the community. If the staff would like to have childcare and workforce as part of their portfolio, then I suggest that you put those in some goals for when we're dealing with the work at the work session that we're going to have on our goals and priorities, and you budget for those. I do not feel that they have a place in this program. I agree with Commissioner Lewis that we need to, Councilor Lewis, that we need to go back and look at the 10 criteria, and maybe you can stretch it, but I'm not willing to stretch it. Many of the nonprofits like the Meyer Memorial Trust and those organizations are gearing a lot of their programs all towards social services. This is one of the few programs that is left that will make a physical improvement to our city. And I don't want to see it changed and go in another direction. We've had many projects over the many years that this program has been in existence that have improved Oregon City greatly. And you can go all around the city and see them, because they are there, they're physical improvements. So while I appreciate the work that you did, I'm disappointed in the fact that this has not been transparent. We have not reached out to our community partners, and the lateness at which we received this, that's what annoyed me the most, getting it at the last minute. We have community partners all over Oregon City who are interested in Metro enhancement, and we should have a citizen involvement process regarding proposed changes. And maybe they have changes, but we haven't had the opportunity to do that. And if there's one thing that you need to know about Oregon City is that we do love our process. There are people who are frustrated with it, but we need to be open and transparent about what we are doing. And I'm really sorry that you put so much work into this, because I am going to strongly recommend that we have some sessions with our partners, people who might be interested in grants, who have gotten grants in the past, and we talk to them about this before we make any substantive changes to a program that has been longstanding in this community. People understand what the program is, and yes, we've been tweaking it all along. I have no problem with making tweaks, but this is a complete departure. So my other points are, there doesn't seem to be a clear understanding of what the Metro Enhancement Program is. Number 3, it is premature to assume that Metro is going to be gone. And number 4, again, this is not economic development's money. This is the community's money, and we need to have a process. So while you've done a lot of work and I appreciate the work, I am not supportive of this in the form that it's at without talking to people in our community about what this may do. And I don't think that the program is that broken. Yes, we had some longer meeting last time, but we only meet once or twice a year. And I don't think that was too much to ask. Number 3 and number 4 is that people have requested extensions for very legitimate reasons. And I don't think that we should automatically cut people off at the knees because they've asked for an extension. That's why we have an evaluation process. So that is all I'm going to say for now. And I know that I just dumped all this on you, but believe me, I have stewed about this since I got it. So I just want you to be very understanding and clear. I don't like it.
All right. Commissioner O'Donnell, are you going to be frank as well?
I suppose I should, considering I bear the name. So I think the first thing I would say, I think it's important to note what Christine Lewis just said. It's not an either or proposition. It's not one approach to the exclusion of the other. So I'm willing to talk about it. And I don't feel that it's money going to the Economic Development Department. They may help administer it and pass it through for the betterment of the community. But I don't feel that the city is putting the grab on this money for their own uses. I do feel, I think when we talk about jobs and talk about what Mr. Gifford mentioned, there are jobs to be had. They're not service industry jobs. They're not minimum wage jobs. I came from the machining industry. I know as of that, we can't even get enough machinists. And so if we're talking about workforce training at a higher level, like partnering with CCC, who already does that, I've got no objection to that type of partnership. The homelessness piece, I'm not sure. I always thought those 501c3s and all were already eligible to make the application to these things. And I'm not sure how we can impact it significantly. There's so many people going at it in so many different silos. I wish they would coordinate the effort between county and city and state and act as partners instead of competitors, because I think we can do a good thing. I'm not sure what impact this funding can make on that. I think, I do question, and I'll just do with some of the hard things, the easy things first. I agree with a cash basis. I mean, this is what we actually have. We can't hope to have this more or less. What do we actually have? I like that. I do question $50,000.
You just froze on us, Frank.
Yeah, he did, I think. Get your card out.
Struggle with that. Something.
Frank, we lost you at the $50,000 or the.
Okay, thanks, Rocky. It says my internet connection is unstable. So I'll say $50,000 as administrative expense on a $200,000 program seems awful prohibitive to me. Seems like a very high number. So that number needs to be justified to me. Mr. Graham's presentation was at a very high level. He touched upon what he wants to do. There's very little specifics as to how to accomplish it, but I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to, in a COVID situation, with stresses being such that they involve survival, they involve needs, true needs versus wants, what we need versus what's nice to have. I understand what he's trying to do. The specifics of the program we don't have, and I don't know that we need those tonight. I don't know how one would accomplish the daycare assistance. I am well aware of the daycare situation because my wife and I babysit two grandchildren, ages 3 and 5, 40 hours a week. And I've seen parents with the kids sitting on their lap trying to work from home, those who are fortunate enough to work from home. And I know the cost of daycare is easily $1,500 a month, which is punitive to somebody. If they're making $10 and they make $1,600 gross a month, they're in the hole just paying their daycare. So if there's a method to help that, even if it's not a permanent alteration of the program, even if it's this interim until we get clear of this mess we're in, I'm listening and I will listen to it. So I do think, it's a question of needs versus wants. We've often pursued programs of, differing value. And I think it's important to take care of the fundamentals first. So I'm willing to listen to daycare and workforce development. And I'm certainly willing to listen to the homelessness piece, but we need to integrate that effort with others. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, I'll take my turn. I had a lot of the same questions and concerns. I have a few questions. I agree with Commissioner O'Donnell that I understand where staff is going here, but here's the one thing that I find very interesting. The history of this program is not about staff. The history of this program is about what this committee drives and the projects that come in based on those 10 criteria. And that's the way it's been since it was started in 1988. Those criteria have been modified a little bit here and there, but never completely, axed to two criteria. So, the fact I guess I'm a little bothered by that, in the sense that this could have been a dialogue from staff with a question about direction before any work went into this. And it seems that some work went into this that may have been a little bit wasted time. You know, you mentioned this is staff driven. It's not supposed to be staff driven. And if you read the documents and the intergovernmental agreements about this program, it's never been about that. And so I do have the same comments about the 10 criteria. I think that these two pieces, the workforce piece and the childcare piece, fit into those 10 criteria. So narrowing it down to saying we're only going to accept this, well, we can accept those, but we're going to also accept every other grant that comes in, just like we always have. So I think we need to really think about that. The other thing is the Metro Enhancement Grant Program and OCCIT in the past was managed by one staff member at a teeny fraction of that huge number that you just laid out. So I do want to see the comparison of what it took to administer this program in the last 10 years, because it was never this high. And so that's a huge concern. And it goes to the point that this is, economic development trying to use this money in their department rather than what this program's for. I do also think that this has come up in both OCCIT and Oregon City Civic Improvement Trust, which I think goes by a different name and has been on hold recently. But what has come up in the last decade every time we talk about these programs, and one that I actually even brought up as an example in the past several times, is if we have departments in the city that feel that there are big picture items that come up in our goals retreat that are targets that we want to tackle as a city, then those need to be budgeted. Those are not grant processes. Those are not grant programs. Those need to be budgeted. And if you look at the Metro and Oregon City agreement, it basically kind of says that. It says things like, let's see here. There's one line here that says, the city shall not use the funds for general governmental purposes. Well, this kind of feels like that. If that's what our goals are leading to these programs that we want to initiate as a city, then those should be in our budget. So I do think I feel the same way on some of these topics. I do have a question about, are we going to be meeting again before this grant cycle opens?
Yes. Well, before the grant cycle opens, no, we intend to. The next meeting will go ahead with the process based on the outcome of this meeting.
What if we wanted to?
Unless you wanted to.
Well, my question is, we don't have an IGA that exists. That's the current IGA expired in June.
We do. We have an extension.
We extended it when?
Matter of fact, I just gave it to Katie a few moments ago because she asked me to, but it is to June. It is to June 20th, 2021.
Okay, that came to this body at our last meeting.
It actually was signed. It was done. I think it was done in June of last year, 2020.
Okay, because the last copy I have is the one that is expired June 30th. Okay, yeah. All right. Let me.
Chairman.
Yes.
If I could, being a middle child growing up, I'm always looking for compromise. And I have to say, rather than on the one hand of saying, this is a great idea, go for it, James, and the other idea of this is really stupid and we ought to just keep things the way they are, I would rather find a compromise and say something to the effect that there are some elements of this that I like. Going to the cash basis, I think we need more discussion on whether or not we want to raise the cap, the advantages and disadvantages of that. But the specifics of whether or not we should solicit applications for grants based on criteria. We have 10 criteria, but perhaps there's some way that we could weigh the efforts regarding childcare, workforce development, and homelessness, weigh them somewhat, even if slightly heavier than we weigh other criteria. And that would be a compromise in my book, that as long as that's top of mind. And I apologize, Commissioner O'Donnell, for making this comment, but there is an enormous amount of coordination going on between the silos. The Homeless Coalition has brought together well over 100 different agencies dealing with homelessness that coordinate and facilitate services provided to homeless. And I think that this city needs to acknowledge that more robustly, that there is not a lot of competition going on back and forth as it was portrayed. I think that there is a lot of cooperation and a lot of coordination going on right now regarding homeless agencies and the services they provide.
Okay.
Well, to me, it's all about the results. So we can take that discussion offline, William.
That's fine.
I do agree with your approach to this. I agree with the compromise approach to this, by the way.
If I could I address some of these issues that were
Well,
brought up?
I hadn't finished mine before William took over, but
Oh, all right, go ahead.
so-
I asked.
no, I concede that you asked. That's fine. So I just will say this really quickly. I guess I don't disagree with the compromise, but the compromise is already there. Unless we can have the talk about weighing certain things, I guess. But if you read the 10 criteria, everything that James is talking about would fit into those criteria. And so we're not really changing anything. In terms of the cash basis, I don't think we've ever really not completely done that. I mean, we even when we've done continuations, those continuations were based on basically earmarking that money for the grants that were going to be continued, and we weren't eating into that. So I don't really see that that's beyond something we've done in the past. We kind of look at the kind of estimate of what we think is coming in, but we've never gone beyond what money is sitting in that account, and everything that has been continued has been earmarked for those grants because we chose those grants. If those don't end up coming to fruition, that money goes back into the pot to go to other programs at some point anyway. So I don't feel like we weren't doing that already. All right, Commissioner McGriff, I think, was up.
I actually wanted to yield so we haven't heard from Corey. And
right.
We've talked to all the committee members have spoken, so I just want to make sure that she doesn't get left out before staff gives their explanation and before Matt gets his helping us understand the cash thing. And I agree with you what you said about that. So I would appreciate if we could have Corey talk, and she wants to, and then go from there.
I'm calling on people that had their hand raised. So Corey, go ahead if you have.
Hi, thanks for letting me chime in. I was just writing some notes. I read through the papers that were sent out. If you guys don't know me very well, I'm a teacher at Malala High School. I teach all the business classes there. I'm also a teacher at Clackamas Community College and Klamath Falls Community College. One of the things I've done recently is I have 2 homeless boys living on the side of my house in an RV where nobody else could get them a place to go. I'm always my house is always just open to everybody. I even have a homeless girl from Gladstone High School staying here right now because she had nowhere to go during the pandemic. So all of this is near and dear to my heart all the time. I guess what I see in it is, I think everything is changing right now. I think everything is changing. The whole world, the way we look at things, the way the communities are reacting to people is changing, and hopefully in a better way. But one of the things I was wondering is, instead of just saying, let's change this, like let's change our criteria or let's adjust it. I mean, if these are certain things that we're looking for this particular year because we want to help this situation this year, can't we just kind of like promote that? Couldn't we kind of say, hey, if you have these kinds of needs right now or are willing, wanting to put in grants for this, we are looking for these types as well as, our regular or something. I mean, again, business, teacher, marketing here, but just maybe a way to just promote it for this year to try and draw more of those in. Because we can grade them however we want. I mean, we are the ones who mark which one gets our first priority and second priority and so forth. So if we just decide that that's kind of what we're looking for this one year, we don't have to change anything, I don't think.
All right, thank you. I agree. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I agree with that approach. I mean, we're in a specific difficult time. We could weight those factors more heavily. It's a very workable solution. I forgot what the other one I was going to say. It had to do with the previous remark, and I'll chime back in when I remember. Thanks.
Okay, William, you have your hand up.
Yes, and I forgot that it was up, but I'm glad that I left it there. I'll take it down now. The other aspect of raising the cap, we really haven't explored too much. And to me, that there are two issues there. One is, by raising the cap, it's a question, a balance that we need to find between opportunities to engage with the community versus the opportunities to make a larger impact. That is to say, with a larger cap, we could get larger programs to apply, and ostensibly with larger monies, they could affect greater change. The flip side of that is that by giving more money away in larger amounts, that excludes, by definition, a number of small people that would like, smaller organizations or individuals that would like to affect some change, but they just need a smaller amount. And if we slice the pies too wide, that can exclude them. So, and I know that we did, it seems to me as though, was it last year or the year before, we went up to 50,000, and before that it was at 30,000. So that's certainly creeping up there. And I don't know if we have any, and some people will just take advantage of it and just say, I just want the largest amount I can get. And I think that we have seen that in the past as well. So I'm kind of torn on that subject. I would feel very comfortable leaving it the way it is.
Well, and I will say that I don't have any problem going to cash, and I do think if we're already at 50,000, that's plenty.
All right, Commissioner O'Donnell.
The only thing I wanted to ask is, do any committee members remember last year? I don't think we're breaking new ground for a city agency to come before this committee and ask for monies to do something on behalf of the city, but I don't recall what that ask was. And if anybody does, please so inform us.
All right.
Public Works and the cross banner, remember?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It was so last year. It was
then there was some signage.
So,
We also funded the police department, had a homeless services.
Yeah, so one could
trash
make the argument. One can make the argument Mr. Graham's approach is not novel. It's something we've done before. I mean, we could have argued back when that the banner should have come out of the economic development department for the city. So I don't think we're in difficult waters, is what I'll say. Thanks.
No, it's a conversation that I've probably had 20 times in the last 10 years, from flower baskets to whatever. I mean, it's been a conversation we've had back and forth, whether it's in the budget or whether it's not. So it's not a new conversation. Commissioner McGriff.
Yeah, no, I agree that we did talk about having the city reduce their requests, because again, I agree with you. If it's a project we feel is important enough, let's get it into the budget so that we fund it the way it needs to be funded, rather than having the city compete with our community. So I guess here's the thing. I want to ask the other committee members. I really feel, again, that we need to be transparent with our stakeholders. This is a community project. This is a community money, and we haven't talked to them about this. Now, we may totally modify these changes, ask staff to go back and rewrite it. I guess part of what I'm concerned about is that, yes, we're going to be meeting again. Why are we in such a hurry? I don't know, Christine, do we have the ability to, because of these circumstances, not because of the money or anything, but because of COVID, to say we want to delay the implementation of processing Metro enhancement grants? I just think we need to take a step back and look at this. And if staff has some changes, let's have it go through the city process that we normally use. Let's talk to our stakeholders. Let's get some input before we start doing other things. And I feel very strongly about that, especially after hearing that the county is now going to try to cut people off at the knees and not have them testify. So I want to be the jurisdiction where we're being more transparent. And staff, believe me, this is not personal criticism. And so please don't sit here thinking like you have to defend everything you did. You threw something out there against the wall. You asked us to look at it. We've looked at it. So let's try to get back on track. And if we need changes to this community program, let's talk to people about it instead of just this group. So I don't know, Commissioner, Mr. Smith, what do you think about that?
Hands keep going up, so I keep calling on them. So we'll get to staff at some point, I guess. William.
Yeah, rather than taking the position of let's take a step back, I'd rather that we take a step forward. And I think the opportunity for transparency is the time when we solicit for applications. I think when the idea of trying to go out to people that have already asked before, I think that there's a danger that we're going to miss people that have not asked before. I think that we have a process in place where we ask the general community if they would like to apply for a grant, and here are the criteria, is a perfectly adequate process. And I think that has all the transparency that one could ask for. And I would say we move ahead.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, I'm trying to put meat on the bones of what Mr. Graham is asking. And in the childcare arena, if someone was trying to provide reduced cost childcare, among our criteria are you're a not-for-profit organization. And how could we help that? Could the city pitch in with the use of a facility? Because that would drive down their overhead. And I think there's a possibility of doing it, combining those elements, not-for-profit, driving down costs. I think about that. I also think about the process itself. As we remember, at the end, we value these things and we score them. And in the end, this committee will make those decisions based on what they think is most worthy project. But again, I think we're at a time where it's needs more than wants. And historically, there's been projects we funded that they're nice, but do they involve survival? Do they involve economic survival? I think we're at a more critical point in time, and I still like the compromise that maybe this time we give a weighted value more to those kind of projects as opposed to community niceties. Thanks.
Okay, I'll make one more comment. I guess the one difference or concern that I have is when we're talking about the IGA and talking about the program and how it's really directed by this committee. It's one thing to open up a grant process with a set 10 criteria and open up to the general public. It's yet another thing for staff to go out there and recruit individual programs or projects for a project. So I hope that's not happening, because that's really not what the process is. If we just put the criteria out there and we only said it was childcare and workforce, the likelihood that we'd get a bunch of applications is probably slim, unless the staff was actually already kind of envisioning the projects they wanted and reached out to those people. All right, so we had a couple questions on criteria. We had questions about the budget and the management piece of it. And then I think I'll let staff take over on that, and then we'll follow up with any other questions or comments.
Thanks. I do appreciate this discussion, and it's an important one. But I want to make it clear, this is not money that's going to be used by city government. This is money that's going to be used by partners in the community, whoever they are, on the subject matter. So this is not, and it's also recognizes that government can't do everything. And so therefore, it is important to have partners to do that. So that's one item. It's not a grab for city government. I mean, it's not a grab by city government. The other thing is, when I said staff driven, I meant that is staff driven as it relates to working with the awardees or with the applicants. That's where I meant it's an administrative process. The other thing is, in terms of the $50,000, that administrative fee, and I think Matt Zook could give us some more insight as how it's used. And after he gives that explanation, we certainly can talk further about that. That's not the issue, but this keep in mind, this is not designed, and this was not my intention to use it for the government, but to really actually bring out partners in the community that can help us on these very important issues. I'll turn it over to Matt about the other thing.
Thank you, James. Good discussion tonight. We'll address the 50,000 first. I've done a little bit of history on the fly in the meeting, and I went back to as far back as 15, 16, which back then the administrative expense was 36,000, which was about 17%, and that's gone up from there each fiscal year, and I think that it's hit 50,000 as far back as 17, 18. And since that's the cap, that represents, depending on the amount of revenue that you receive in a year, if you receive $300,000, that's about 20%. Excuse me, 17%. So it looks like 17% has been maintained. Now, there's justification that goes into that I've looked briefly at, although I will say that I have some head scratching as well. There are basically the $50,000 goes primarily towards 5 staff members at various percentages: economic development manager, economic development coordinator. There's a finance director, deputy finance director, and senior accountant. And that's historically what that has been. However, I look at the hours there, and I have some questions about that as well. We have, and this is what has gone into the history. So I don't know how much time is actually spent on that. I have not been here to observe that myself. But I will say that as I looked at that even today, I was wondering if that was completely justifiable. So I think what I would suggest is that I could take a look at least, and maybe we even track that time for the next year. And honestly, the way that is calculated right now is actually up in the almost $60,000 range, but it's being capped at 50. So there's very little beyond the staff, and there's just some recording, some meals, and some audit expenses, which are very minor. So my recommendation would be that, yeah, we take a look at that 50,000, and I don't know what the target reduction would be. If you think about what nonprofit overhead discussions are, they're generally, around anywhere from 4 to 10%. And folks really look at that overhead cost when they're donating to a nonprofit. So there's some optics here that I personally think is warrants looking at. If we, go into reduce that would just simply allow for more awards. And right now, let me transition over to the cash basis discussion. The program, as I review it, has never been at risk of awarding more than it's had on hand. I think the whole discussion about that, if one was to make the presumption that the program went away, and how quickly we would be notified of that program going away, we could over award and not receive the next fiscal year's amount. So let me simplify that example with an example. Right now, according to your staff report, we have 283,000 on hand that's essentially unawarded. By the end of June 2021, we'll have about 283,000. The proposal that James has is to award 200,000 for next year. If no more Metro money comes in, that would leave us with $83,000. We'd be in the black. And so we'd be okay to award anywhere from $200,000 to $283,000 with the presumption that no other Metro money comes in. What I've heard in this discussion tonight is that that doesn't seem to be as much of a risk, or you can evaluate how much risk that really is. I don't think that the proposal that is on the table in the staff report, if we went at 200,000, we're still on a cash basis. So I don't know the history of the award, the size of the overall awards from this committee. I don't know if it's gone up as much as 300,000 or 400,000. As long as you're in that $200,000 range or 283,000 for this next year, you're going to be okay. And I think James's point was that if this program were to go away and we operate on a cash basis, we would have enough cash on hand to fulfill all the commitments that we've made to these grantees and still be in the black, whereas the city wouldn't be holding the bag for awards that went out and then we didn't get any revenue for it. So I think that's the risk. I don't think it's real. I don't think it's real today if Metro continues to operate with this program. So hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't, let me know and I can further explain. And I can also come back to the committee with a little bit more detail if you want on the $50,000. So.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
It's just one question it's a clarification question for Matt Zook. The $283,000, I want to make sure that does not include awards that have been given but not dispersed.
That is correct.
That's free.
That's okay. Yeah, that's unencumbered, uncommitted.
Okay.
And that could go up. I mean, if nobody's that's operating on the assumption that everybody spends everything that they've been awarded to. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Commissioner Lau-Smith.
Thanks. So can we maybe address Commissioner McGriff's question about the timeline? I'm trying to understand the timeline for the grant program and maybe why we couldn't come back, or it sounds like maybe we need to come back and have one last check before this goes out, since I don't think there's consensus on approving what's been presenting. So that means we probably need to come back with a new plan. I don't know, Councilor Lewis, if you have the answer to that, or staff, either one.
We have to allow time for the awardees or I should say the applicants, to put together their application. So, the program for any particular fiscal year ends on June 30th of every year. So we have to be cognizant of giving people enough time to put together their application. So that would be my concern about delaying the program further. The idea was to actually, based on whatever today's decision would be, is that we would the applications would be publicly available on February the 22nd, 2021. And then applications would be due to City Hall on April 29th. That gives them a little over 2 months to put together their program. And then on May 20th, the committee would meet to award grants on May 20th. So that's that was the general timeline.
Okay, but I don't, doesn't seem like there's any problem with waiting a month or pushing off the awards a month if we felt like we needed some more time to. The money's not going anywhere, right? I mean, the money's in the bank, so.
It's just the time that it's not allowing. It's cutting the time allowed for people to put together their applications. That's what I'm concerned about.
No, it shortens the time that they have to execute their projects in the next year. Because we could still give them 2 months to put together an application and say they start July 30th instead of starting June 30th or something like that. The contracts between the city and the grantees in terms of being executed, I had from June the 21st to the 30th. So from June the 21st to the 30th, the contracts would be executed, and then people could start their projects, execute their projects in July going forward.
All right, Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. I believe last year we did our deliberation on June 25th. So that gives us 4.5 months between where we are now and if we were to say the last week of June. And yes, that's cutting it close for the end of fiscal year. But I think that gives us plenty of time to meet again if we need to. Still have at least 6 to 8 weeks for grant proposals to be drawn up, written, and submitted. Gives staff plenty of time to process between submission and our deliberations. So if we need to meet again, I think that with Metro's timeframe, this just needs to be done by next fiscal year, which again starts in July.
Well, just clarification for me. When June 30th comes, and that's the end of the fiscal year, that'll be the end of the fiscal year for the contract we had already approved the first time. Last year when you met in that meeting, those projects were approved, and then they have until June 30th of this year to finish. And this time, we're getting a whole new batch of projects. And if you met on May 20th to look at these grants, they would have until June 30th to execute their contracts. But yes, so they'll have to June 30th to execute the contracts. And then they would start executing their projects starting July. I just want to make that, so I just want to make sure we give people enough time to put together their applications.
Frank, you were muted, but it sounds like an IGA issue, and I'm not sure why we can't just extend the time past June 30th.
I agree with that.
That's in a simple amendment. I don't understand. I feel like the IGA ending June 30th is causing us some time issues, and
I think you're correct, Commissioner Lyle Smith. That is not a constraint. I think we can work around that. And I think Christine is saying that as well.
Okay, Commissioner O'Donnell, did you have something?
No, basically, I agree with what's just been said by Commissioner Lyle Smith and Commissioners McGriff. I mean, the people have until, the way it's structured now, they have until June 30th to expend their previously awarded grants, unless someone was pushing back the day a little bit and giving us a chance to work through these issues.
Frank, you're freezing up again.
Okay. All right, so I want to remind everyone that there's these lovely little hand things. You can use them when you want to be called on, and then you can take them down, and then I know that you're done, and then I can come back. I see William waving at me occasionally, but his hand, he's using his real hand sometimes, and it disappears into the background. All right, William, go for it.
I was trying to cover my bases there, Commissioner. There's an alternative that I think that the committee really should consider, and it's one of my favorite solutions, and that is do nothing. Let the program go on its predestined course. We have already resolved for my satisfaction, that the 50 grand for staff is in ballpark anyway. I think that if we don't change the cap to 60,000, we leave it at 50. I think that certainly satisfies everybody. I think that we already have our 10 criteria. I think if this committee is socially aware and woke to the fact that there are social issues that we should be giving consideration to, I think that we can proceed just fine. I don't think we need another meeting, and I think that we can continue as we have in the past. That's my 2 cents. It's an easy out, and I don't. If it ain't broke, let's not fix it.
All right, Commissioner Lyle Smith.
Well, Mr. Gifford stole my thunder. That was essentially what I was going to say. I kind of feel like we have some general agreement that we need to leave the 10 criteria, honor the 10, that also maintains our transparency, that we're not changing anything. The program is staying as it was before, so nobody should be surprised by that with the 10 criteria. The only question would be, if we do any marketing or anything like that, or how we communicate about the grant program, if we have priorities that we want to ask the community to consider, or let them know if we have priorities, that would be probably worthwhile to be transparent about that, so that we don't, end up with 10, parks requests when we were really hoping to get childcare or workforce development. So I think there's probably some work to do. I do have to leave because I have another meeting, and I would like at least a 10-minute break between my meetings. So I'm going to head out, and I'm sure you all can wrap this up and let me know. I'll check back in on where this goes, but thanks for the input.
All right, Commissioner McGriff.
Thank you, Rachel, for your comments. I know you're logging off. I generally will err on the side of trying to come to some agreement, but I can't move that far to the middle today. And I am not going to apologize for it. If we leave the program exactly the way it is, we can move forward. I don't think we should be going out and soliciting people for things other than the general announcement. We need to let the chips fall where they may. Again, I'm going back to, this is a community program. If the community wants to make proposals about certain things, that's fine. I feel really uncomfortable about saying that this is the priority. If that's a community priority, then those grants will come forward. I don't think it's our place to narrow this any further than it already is with the 10 criteria. And maybe you all are reading those a little more liberally than I am, because I'm reading them fairly narrowly. Again, I want information about the staff costs that Matt has already said he's going to provide. I want to have some input from the community because they've certainly been telling me what they've seen already, that they are a little bit appalled by. Not that they disagree, they're just concerned that we have not been transparent. So that is why I am leaning on this. My phone blew up yesterday. And when I say blew up, 5 different constituents asking me what the heck was going on. So I want to be responsive to that. And if we need to have another meeting, those who don't feel we don't need to have another meeting, you don't have to attend, but I think we have some things that we need to talk about. And some of those are going to come up to the commission to talk about further. So I just want to be cognizant of our time. I want to be cognizant of your time. I want to be cognizant of staff time. And again, if we'd had some prior discussion, as Commissioner Lewis said about this, I don't think we would be at this point in time.
So I don't think you have to come to the middle. We have 2 people that just said leave it as it is. You said you're willing to leave it as it is. That's 3 on this committee already. Based on what everyone else has said tonight, I think that's pretty much where we're going. So, you know, someone can make a motion and then that's the way it is. But so I don't think that's coming halfway at all. Councilor Lewis.
Yeah, thank you. I think I am in the realm of leave it where it's at with just a couple of asterisks. One is Mr. Zook has indicated that there's some tracking he can do of the city hours that go into administration. I think it would be good to track so that we have that information to kind of right size the administrative cost, if not this year, then going forward. There will be a new IGA because we're operating in extension territory. So it might be a good bargaining place to have some fresh data for that new IGA that will be for next fiscal year on forward. And then the second place where I'm still feeling a little bit of uncertainty is around both the score sheet itself. I like the idea of having instead of doing the rank of like 1 to 17, I like, you know, scoring each one on like the merits of how it meets the criteria, the importance and their ability, the program's ability to pull it off. But I don't like the way the score sheet is now with those focused areas. So I'd like to see a new version of a score sheet. And also the proposal, as I read it, suggested we would not come in, each of us having scored at home. We would only score after hearing the presentations. And I would like this committee to think thoughtfully about what that would mean to our meeting, and that I would at least need 3 or 4 minutes to do my score sheet after each one of those presentations. It's just going to make our meeting very different. It's a good idea to discuss. I'm not for it. I'm not against it, but it's going to change how we do our work.
Okay, Commissioner O'Donnell.
I agree with what Christine said. I also agree with Commissioner Lyle Smith. Where we always fall short is on the advertising piece, and we need to get this out. I suspect if anyone's phone is blowing up, it might be blowing up from those who are previously awards. And there's a lot of people who think this money is proprietary to them, and it's not. It's to whomever, it's to the highest and best use, what benefits the community. And you've seen how many times the same people come back to get these awards. And in fact, I think we put something in place that said, if you're previously awarded the last 2 years, you're not here this year. And so I just want to open it to whatever solutions are put forward. I know we have a social conscience, all of us, and I'm willing to listen to anything. And I mean, I'll go with the group, and I'll make it work either way. So thanks.
All right, William.
Mr. Chair, did I hear you earlier asking for a motion, and do we need a motion to get off the dime on this?
I would say we need direction. So I guess that, I mean, what I'm hearing is, you know, if we, I think most people are coming to a semi-compromise, but we might need to have a meeting to address maybe the score sheet and get an answer back from staff on some of the other questions. But other than that, I think we can at least have a motion now to give staff direction on what answers we need at hopefully a small meeting. And then direction on where, I think we can give them direction on where to go tonight for the general scheme of the grant program, but.
So I would move what Christine Lewis said, and I would second that.
I'll second that and I'll make the motion.
She made the motion. She already said it all. So I'm just seconding what she said.
She said it, she didn't make a motion.
Well, let's
So
be
I
clear
will
on
move
what we're voting.
what Christine Lewis said about the costs, the score sheet, and scoring after the presentation. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded in, and we call for the vote.
Well,
I need a point of clarification.
Okay.
Does
go
that
ahead.
motion include a review of the score sheet prior to the?
Yes, that was my second point.
It does, you're saying, okay.
Yes.
All right,
Score sheet, let's score on the merits, and we need a new version of the score sheet. We want to right size the administrative costs, and we want to score after hearing the presentation, which will change the composition of our meeting. Did I get all that right, Christine?
That's exactly it.
Okay,
And then William, you seconded that?
Yes.
Okay, other comments? Commissioner McGriff,
nope,
we need to, what?
I said nope.
Okay, and William, you're good.
Call the question.
Okay, call for the question.
All right, I'll do my best Katie Riggs impersonation here.
Yes.
We have a motion on the floor. And I believe I'm going to actually ask for a bit of clarification from Commissioner McGriff exactly on the motion. They're in part for the minutes. I had a little bit of confusion with respect to how you would like to proceed for the score sheet.
The suggestion is that we score the projects on the merits. It was suggested by Councilor Lewis that we score them after we hear their presentation, take 2 or 3 to 4 minutes, and that we want to see a new version of the score sheet to reflect that. Is that correct?
Okay.
And that we were going to be having another minute to review this.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's more on a technical aspect.
You're
there.
welcome.
All right. I will call the roll. Commissioner Smith.
Is that me or, oh, the other one's
You
gone.
have to leave.
Yes, aye. Aye.
All right. Commissioner O'Donnell.
aye.
Commissioner McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Gifford.
Aye.
He's not a commissioner.
Sorry, I guess committee member Gifford. Committee member Ellis.
Aye.
And Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Okay.
Point of order,
The ayes have it.
I was just handed a note saying the roads and sidewalks are okay for now, but cars are getting iced over. The wind is picking up. If anybody needs to drive tonight, better do it now.
All right, I think that's
All right.
pretty much it. Do we have an economic development manager report?
no, not tonight.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Oh,
Wait,
I'm sorry.
go
Sorry.
for it, quick.
Well, we want to we did have the VFW, one of the awardees last year, the VFW people agreed to return the money. They didn't, they were successful in fundraising. So they returned $11,000 to us or agreed not to use the $11,000 for the Tyrone S. Woods Park Memorial. So we certainly want to thank them for returning the money because they did and congratulate them on a successful fundraising campaign.
All right.
Work for next year.
All right, drive safe, everyone. Although we're all mostly at home, most of us, some of us.
That doesn't
Get home safe. All
If
right.
you have a Subaru, you don't need to worry about it. You
Good
just
night.
go.
I got a sleeping bag.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Aye, thank you.